You're live, Peter. Off you
All
go.
right, we've got everyone in. Great. I don't know if we've still got more to join, but I will just start off. I'm just going to run through a couple of notes before we get started. And I'm just going to get straight into it because we've got a big panel today and I want to make sure we give everyone plenty of time. So if you do have questions for our panelists, we're going to be going to the panelists one by one and they're going to answer some pre-prepared questions. But if you do have additional questions, you can pop those in the chat or save them to the end, and we will, we'll make sure that we get those asked. And just to let everybody know that the session is being recorded, so you can watch it back afterwards, just in case you miss anything or you want to check anything that was said, or maybe it was just so enjoyable and so fun that you want to relive it. That is going to be sent to you after we're done. So I guess let's get started. Good afternoon and welcome to our latest Industry Insights event presented by Wyndham City Council and the Gordon Skills and Jobs Centre. So these monthly webinars are designed to help people who are looking to gain a deeper understanding of different industries and employment pathways in our local area to help them start building a career. And this month, our industries that we're highlighting are horticulture and agribusiness. So we have an excellent panel in those areas, which is very exciting. So my name's Peter. I'm one of the local jobs officers at Wyndham. And I'm also joined by a couple of our other team members. I certainly didn't put all this together on my own, so shout out to Heather from the Gordon and her team, and Keith, who's working the behind-the-scenes chat, and Yasin and Saria from our team who've helped put it all together. So it's been a big job, and thanks all the panelists for joining as well. So before I get into anything, I just want to start with a brief acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're all joining from today. I'm personally on Wadawurrung land today, but I do want to acknowledge both the Wadawurrung and Bunurong people whose land Wyndham City operates across. And since some of you might be joining from outside Wyndham, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands that you might be joining from and pay all our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, who always have and always will care for country and community. Now, before we get to our panelists, just tell you a little bit about the Opportunity Wyndham initiative and a little bit about the Gordon Skills and Jobs Centre, who the two are co-presenting today. So Opportunity Wyndham provides local businesses with free tools, resources and access to recruitment services to help local talent to build stronger, more inclusive workplaces. And the initiative brings together Wyndham City Council, some local employment partners, educational institutions and businesses to build pathways to employment. And the Gordon Skills and Jobs Centre, who are co-producing it with us today, offer free career employment advice for everyone in the Geelong and Wyndham regions, but we won't talk about Geelong, we'll just focus on Wyndham. And their qualified advisors can help with free services like career planning, resume and cover letter and interview preparation, apprenticeship and traineeship advice, and that's all delivered through one-on-one appointments and workshops. Now, I think that's enough preamble. So let's get into our panelists. First one on my list is you, Matt. So Matt's from All Green. All Green's been operating in the Wyndham community for over 40 years, and they're now one of the largest plant nurseries in all of Melbourne. And today they've been kind enough to send us Matt, their operations manager. Matt's a dedicated family man who's called the city of Wyndham home for most of his life. He's got 15 years of experience working within Wyndham, and 7 of those are with All Green. So he's become a valuable member of the community. As I said, he's currently filling the role of operations manager, utilising his knowledge and experience to ensure that the company runs smoothly and efficiently. Welcome, Matt. It's nice to have you here.
Yes, thanks for having me.
That's all right. Matt's been a real trooper because he came out to an Opportunity Wyndham event last night and now he's here again with us today. So we appreciate all the time you've been giving us. So I'll just start with the first question. So Matt, what trends have you noticed in the nursery and garden supply industry over the past few years, and how have you or All Green adapted to these?
Well, some of the trends that we're sort of noticing or becoming more frequent is around sustainable gardens and online purchases. So the industry, pre-COVID was certainly wanted to see, feel, touch, smell a lot of the plants or products that a garden supplies or a nursery may have to offer. But obviously, with limited restrictions through that COVID period of time, we had to change a couple of things that we did in the industry. But also a lot of eco-friendly products. So they want a lot of the consumers want harmful or pesticides that might be a little bit more eco-friendly for their gardens, their children, their pets, the environment as a whole. That in hand with possibly the way they're shopping. Combine that with online purchases and those things. So they're probably the biggest trends we've noticed, within our industry or our business.
Yeah, great. And aside from just sort of the trends, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that are facing your business and the industry today?
Yeah. Look, the industry is pretty highly competitive. Many businesses offer similar products. The industry have a range of products. So, quality control is one aspect. Being able to differentiate yourself within the business to others that sell, similar products or have same sort of marketing campaigns. Labour shortages in this industry has been a big impact over recent times. And then probably more specifically, we've got a lot of environmental regulations that you need to adhere to and comply to in that industry, in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. You mentioned labour shortages. Do you have advice for anyone who is looking for a pathway into a career in sort of the nursery and garden supply area?
I think it's a great industry to get into. It doesn't matter about age or background, in my opinion. I think the industry's got a wide array of roles. More traditionally speaking, you could be a groundskeeper or could be a pathway to landscaping, those sorts of things. But with the technological advancements that we touched on a little bit earlier, it's unearthed what this industry may have to offer. At the moment, they're using drones and robots. And sorry to steal your space there, Craig, but some of the traditions may have shifted away from what it was. It's not necessarily just potting and growing plants, or getting your shovels and your manual labour out. It's quite an innovative industry now, and a great opportunity for multiple roles. So, yeah,
great. So when it comes to your customers, how do you educate them about plant care and maintenance, and what role do you see nursery and garden supply businesses playing in promoting a sustainable and environmentally friendly practice for people?
Yeah, so look, from a business point of view, I think we need to encourage and promote sustainability, eco-friendly products, but how we go about educating customers that maybe a total green thumb or could have multiple years experience. We use horticulturists on site within the business. More traditional flyers or brochures. We've got a lot of resources online through our website. Some people are looking at sort of YouTube type videos and online tutorials in that sort of fashion. So there's some of the ways that we try and encourage that. But from a business point of view, we've tried to shift to eco-friendly products, sustainability, encourage recycling. They're the things that we're encouraging and promoting within our business.
Great. Yeah, that's really good. And last question for you for now. How do you see the industry evolving in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? And what career opportunities and challenges do you anticipate coming up as those changes happen?
Yeah, I think technology is going to play a massive part in the industry. I think as it continues to develop, we've seen it in recent years with automated, watering systems or automated irrigation, drones to check in on, the water usage or foliage. So I think technology and those technological advancements are a big key. But also on a more sort of residential or DIY type front, limited spaces. People don't have necessarily massive backyards for big gardens. So how can we better utilise balconies or porches, container type garden beds? I think that's going to be a big space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Great. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Matt. We'll keep you on, and anybody, if you've got questions for Matt, feel free to pop them in the chat now, or just save them and we can raise them a little bit later. So next up, we've got Craig. Craig is an award-winning horticulturalist of 45 years experience at growing his own food organically and creating edible gardens. He's worked extensively in both wholesale and retail nurseries in Victoria, and is the current Vice President of the Werribee Park Heritage Orchard at Werribee Park Mansion. So he's been a volunteer there for 13 years. Craig's published 5 books on horticulture and being self-sufficient. He's an educator that teaches others how to live a more sustainable and self-sufficient life in an urban setting, which touches a little bit on what Matt was just talking about. And he works with over 7 different councils throughout Victoria doing that work. So Craig, sounds like you're a very busy man. So thank you so much for taking some time out to come and join us today.
No worries. Yes. Look, thanks, Peter. Yeah, good to be along.
So similar questions to what I asked Matt. So what trends have you noticed in your industry over the past few years, and how have you kind of adapted to those?
Yeah. Look. Well, it has changed significantly. I mean, COVID didn't do us very many favours, and there's certainly less nurseries, unfortunately, and I think that we can do more of them. But it's a sign of the times, I guess, and for some of the reasons that Matt's been talking about, the challenges are fairly large. Hugely competitive business. I think that for nurseries to survive these days, they've got to have a clear line of difference and offer something that the larger companies can't. And I think that comes through well-educated people that can really offer, appropriate advice for the time. People that, as Matt rightly points out, they're moving towards looking to utilise space wisely and better utilise their gardens. So, nurseries really need, qualified people that can advise their clients, along those lines. So, in terms of the agribusiness side of things, I think that there's huge moves afoot. Soil microbiology is starting to play a huge part in discussions these days throughout soil management and so forth. And look, I've been studying it for the last 18 months, and it's mind-blowing what we've learned and what changes need to take place to move forward. So I think that's going to be a big part of future education.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So that, I mean, you've kind of touched a little bit on the trends and the challenges there, but are there any sort of other challenges that you'd like to highlight?
Other than the need to move away from the chemicals and more toward organic measures, introducing things like companion plants and moving away from, using any sort of chemicals whatsoever. There's really no need once you understand how that works. So I guess not so much a challenge, but certainly something to be considerate of. So,
yeah, an opportunity.
Yes, absolutely opportunity. Yeah, huge opportunity.
Yeah, great. And because we are all about jobs, do you have any advice for anyone looking for that career pathway into this industry?
Look, there's lots of ways to go about that. I mean, and sometimes getting jobs, even though there seems to be a lot of employment about, to get jobs that, like an apprenticeship and so forth, can sometimes be a bit hard to get. So I think for people to volunteer and maybe learn some of the skills that might be attractive to a potential employer. So, I've been volunteering down at Werribee Park for the last 13 years, and there's some great opportunities down there, and I'm sure James will no doubt elaborate on that. But the better educated that they possibly can be before they actually go and apply for a job, I think it sets them well for, some success in getting employment. So I think that would be a big plus, get themselves educated. That's the paper.
Okay, yep, sounds good. And we'll talk to John a bit later about a bit more of the education side. But on that topic, how do you go about educating plant care and maintenance for your customers, and what role do you see sort of the nursery businesses playing to promote that sustainable and environmentally friendly practice?
Yeah, so I guess how do you do that? And that's an interesting point, and I think that Matt also touched on that by way of technology. It's going to play a huge part as we move forward into the next 5 or 10 years, and I know that's something you have earmarked to talk about, but I think he's right, and the way in which you do that, and not everyone's going to wander up to a nursery to try and get that information. You know? So websites, and the way I do it obviously is social media. I pick a plant per day and I post about it. It's free information. It's easy to put a link toward your business at the bottom of it, so that they can either purchase products from that or get further information, make inquiries and the like. And workshops online, and also workshops face to face in nurseries. In fact, I've run a couple on behalf of All Green at their nurseries over the last few years. So, I think again it's all about education, trying to show people that there are some alternatives rather than be resorting to chemicals, or telling them about how we need to manage soil a little bit better and the sorts of things that they should be using and the sorts of ingredients they perhaps should be using less of. So communicating that in those sorts of forums, I think, is a good way forward. So
yeah, great. And it sounds like you've been very proactive in embracing technology to kind of really drive that sustainability and that self-sufficiency forward, which is really great.
Yeah, look, I mean, we all had our hands forced a little bit, I suppose, through the last couple of years. I mean, I've been doing garden consultations just 40 kilometres from home. I was limiting myself. I now do them Australia-wide. I've realised that I don't have to be in your backyard to see it. You see, so, I mean, sometimes, whilst we think that, that the world's fallen around us, often there's lots of opportunity that a lot of people don't see. And I nearly overlooked it. Sort of thought, geez, now how do I work forward from here? And it's been a huge bonus. So, out of some despair, there was a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did mention that I was going to ask you this, but how do you see? Is there anything else you want to mention about sort of the next 5-10 years and how you see the industry evolving?
Yeah, well, look, there's probably more about the agribusiness rather than horticulture. I think horticulture will grow with the needs as people become more aware, and I guess the soil microbiology is a new frontier to some degree. Soil microbiologists are only just slowly but surely starting to make mainstream this information available, and it's difficult to understand, but it's slowly but surely being made more available in an understandable format, I suppose. And when people start to hear the sorts of things that we've been doing wrong to soil for the last 100 years, and what we need to do to make amends and move forward from here, will change how or what they buy and what they use. And it will also change a lot of how the agribusinesses are going to have to grow their food. They're going to have to look at regenerative growing plants. Monocultures are going to be a thing of the past down the track. It's going to take some time to transition from where we're at now to where they need to be, but down the track, that's what's going to have to happen. So and that's going to be a 5 to 10 year at least transition, maybe even longer.
Yeah,
but it's certainly something that's on the cards, I can assure you.
Right. Oh, thank you, Craig. Some really good insight and just a bit of a look into how broad, I suppose, the industries of horticulture and agribusiness really are. I mean, I didn't even understand all of what you said, but it sounds amazing just hearing kind of the different elements to it. So thank you very much for answering those questions. Next up, we have Elisa from Fresh Select. Fresh Select have been supplying Australia with the freshest produce for over 60 years. They grow broccoli, baby broccoli, cauliflower, cabbages, Brussels sprouts, iceberg, cos lettuce, and hydroponic lettuce. And Elisa joined Fresh Select in 2018 as their Chief Human Resources Officer, with specialities in recruitment, mediation, industrial relations, and compliance. Elisa has enjoyed the shift from the corporate world to the horticulture industry with a new set of challenge. And prior to Fresh Select, Elisa was consulting to organisations in all things human resources and spent a decade in private recruitment and outplacement services. So really looking forward to your insights, Elisa, from a HR perspective, getting that different set of eyes on these industries. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. It's really great to have all of the panelists today, but yeah, thank you for making the time. So what would you say are some of the big challenges facing farmers today?
Look, there's been a lot over recent years. I think in terms of farming, acquiring land. So, trying to find land at a reasonable price point is a really tricky one. And we're always looking all over Australia for that right piece of land with the right soil and, the right amount of rain in that region and the right distribution channels off that land. So that's still getting harder and harder with pricing of land. I think weather's been challenging, as all of you could probably understand over especially the past year. Our supply partners in Queensland have had a really tough time with floods, etc. So everyone's just starting to level out now again, but we never know what's ahead weather-wise. Costs are going up, and again, it's not just in this particular industry, but we're certainly feeling that. Especially a lot of the input costs are rising significantly. Labour costs are going up. Trying to find labour, as most people are talking about today, is still a really tricky one for us. So there's, a myriad of challenges. It feels like we just get through one and something else is thrown at us. Over the past probably 5 years since I've been in this hot seat, even compliance with, labour compliance and quality compliance just keeps growing year on year around what we need to do in those areas. So that's just something, legislation is changing rapidly and really bringing the horticulture industry probably up to where it needs to be honest, up to where a lot of the other industries have been. But it just means a lot of work across the board for all the people in this industry, especially, farmers and growers and the like. Yeah.
Great. And how do you think technology's impacted those changes, and how do you think it will continue to in the future?
I would say it's been slower in this industry, I would say, compared to like a manufacturing. I do think tech has been a bit slower in the farming side of things. We certainly are using technology more and more to capture data and to make decisions from that data. So whether that's our yield, whether that's productivity, we make a lot better informed decisions now with the tech we're using to capture that. We use drones, but in terms of it taking away labour, I don't think we're at that point yet. And, in future we might be, but we're not quite there yet around that. We're just trialling things at the moment that looks, use the drone to spray some of our produce. So that's something quite new age for us. But it's still a little bit clunky, some of these things that have been introduced into our industry. So we're certainly ones to try new things, but it is slow to the fore. Yeah,
absolutely. And how does a company like Fresh Select balance the need for the increased food production that everybody's looking for, but how do you balance that with the concerns for sustainability and the environmental impact?
Yeah, we've made a really big impact in that space. We've set up a company called NutraV, which is a food manufacturing company. It's here on site at Fresh Select and operating in its own right. But essentially that company has been set up to take the waste. So all the produce out in the field, not just ours, but, industry-wide as much as we can possibly take. So the things that our biggest customer is Coles, and Coles have quality standards, and there's a lot of things that get left in the field because of size, because of colour. So absolutely beautiful produce still, but just not quite meeting the spec for a Coles or another supermarket. So we feed that into our NutraV company, and they turn that produce into powder, vegetable powders, and then that's going into all sorts of different things, but we're also making snack foods out of it. So we've got a produce line on the shelves at Coles at the moment under the NutraV brand. We've got vegetable powder and snack foods that is pretty much, we've got that full cycle going through from seed through to the waste through to powder, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's great. And just not having any of that great food wasted.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we've got a lot of other measures in place here, and it's certainly a key focus area. It's a focus area for the supermarkets, which means it's got to be a focus area for their suppliers. So certainly having a look at what more we can do in terms of sustainability as we move forward into the next 12 months.
Great. And do you have any advice for someone who's looking to get a start in the farming industry?
Look, I would probably say be prepared to start at the ground up. I think I look at our most successful employees here who have really made an impact here, and they're ones that started on the floor, whether it was in the warehouse, whether it was on the farm, whether it was in our pack house, but they really learned the way things run from the ground up, and quite quickly the ones that have had that ambition have tracked through to supervisory and then leadership roles, and I think what they know from being out in a farm and cutting produce or driving a tractor to then sitting up in a boardroom at a meeting is so valuable. So just be prepared to get your hands dirty, I think, and to get a start in terms of anything like that. It's having a look at perhaps some certificates that you could do or some licenses that you could get that might give you a bit of a leg up once you get into the industry, and might sort of make your progress a little bit quicker. But there's certainly plenty of roles out there. We've got plenty of professional roles too, in quality, in sales, in finance, leadership, management, ops opportunities. So, always looking for people that are super keen on our industry that want to make a start.
Great. Yep, that's good to hear. And how do you see your industry evolving, the farming in particular, evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? And do you see that having more opportunities or challenges for people?
I think it will just become more and more professional, and I think again there's that responsibility down that whole supply chain now, that whoever you're supplying into has standards they set, and that falls right down the line. So gone are the days where a farmer might just be able to drive a tractor and lead a few crew. They need a lot more than that these days. They need some real business acumen about them. So I do think that those roles are really upskilling, and the skills required to operate in traditionally really blue collar roles it is really building upon, and we're training internally in that. We don't expect everyone to come to us with those skills, but certainly to be open to the fact that they're really diverse roles now that are in the farming industry.
Great. Well, thank you, Elisa. That's all really good. Now, because you were talking about some qualifications and certificates and things that people can do, we might move on to John from the Gordon. So John is he studied horticulture at the Gordon back in the late 1990s and started his own garden and maintenance business, as well as working at Bunnings back in 2000, and continued to work at both of these until 2020, so 20 years. But on top of that, in 2018, while he was still doing both of those, he began teaching casually at the Gordon. And since then, he's become a full-time employee, teaching the certificate 2 and 3 levels in horticulture, parks and gardens, and landscaping. So, great person to go to next and hear a little bit about, those certificates and qualifications people can get to have a bit of a leg up. So, thanks, John.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
So, John, in your opinion, what are the key skills and knowledge areas that you think need to be developed for people that are looking to succeed in horticulture?
Oh, we're looking for people who have got a bit of a passion and some enthusiasm for the horticulture industry to start with. Anybody that's had a little bit of a home garden or have, had parents that have enjoyed gardening, they're really the type of people that we sort of see coming through the doors here as well. Observation is another skill that is really quite important in the horticulture, parks and gardens industry. There's a lot of problem solving, there's a lot of trial and error. So your observation of what you've done, whether it worked, whether it didn't work, certainly really does help you out in this area as well. And finally, probably initiative is another key skill for success in the horticulture industry. If you can see something going wrong and you know how to rectify it, then by all means put your skills into action and get in there and fix the problem if you possibly can.
Yeah, great. And how does the programs that you're running help those students, I guess, get those key skills and prepare them for employment in the horticulture industry?
Yeah, understandable, definitely. All of our training packages that we have here, regardless whether it's horticulture, parks and gardens, turf management, we've also got conservation, environmental management here as well. All of those courses that we offer are formulated with industry knowledge and experience, and also they've also got some input into how the units and the courses are put together, so that we are teaching stuff that is relevant to employment in the area that we're teaching them for. Also, with our teaching, when we go through, we are teaching at industry level. So we're not teaching a watered down version of what they will encounter in the real world. If the real world expect a certain level of safety or a certain level of performance, then that's what we'll teach, so that they're all aware and they're ready to move on into the workforce after they've finished their courses with us. Great.
That sounds really good. And I guess in that position, what trends and advancements have you noticed in horticulture and agribusiness that people should be aware of if they're looking to get into the businesses?
Yeah, definitely. The real trends that we've been noticing in our area is the sustainability movement. And over the COVID period, when everybody was going through lockdown and they had a chance to have a garden and put in a veggie patch, or even just put a few flowers on the balcony or something like that, people have really taken that and run with it. So sustainability is one of the big trends that we've seen. Also, with the acknowledgement of climate change over the years as well, we've seen a lot of our units and courses sort of trending towards looking into the future, not just fixing the problems of today, or not fixing the problems today, but fixing the problems of today, in a longer looking ahead and making it a bit more of a foreseeable sort of thing. We're also focusing a lot on Indigenous plants, and not just native to Australia or native to Victoria, but more Indigenous to the specific areas, so that people can see how individual places do have their own individual types of plants and vegetation as well. We're also holding on to the trends of the electronic age as well. A lot of things are controlled electronically these days, and even via remote through your phone and things like that. We can turn on our sprinklers from home here in the hothouses via remote, so we don't have to come in, over the hot holiday period and things like that. So the smartphone ability and the electronic controls are really starting to play a big factor in this area.
Yeah, great. Okay. And could you provide a couple of examples of the career pathways that students can pursue into the horticulture industry?
Yeah, sure, no worries at all. With our parks and gardens and also our turf management units here, all of the students are apprentices. So they've already decided that they did want to move into this area, and they've got themselves an apprenticeship either with Parks and Gardens, local governments, bigger nurseries around the area and things like that as well. But for the horticulture students, there is a lot of areas that they can go into. Some choose to move into the retail nursery sector. Others move into the wholesale nursery sector. We just recently had one of our students win an award for top student because she's now the head propagator at one of the leading nurseries in Victoria. So there's a lot of things. Some students just come through for their own benefit. They feel like they just want to be a better home gardener, or they might want to have a little side hustle going on social media or something or other like that. But there is plenty of pathways to go into. And finally, of course, if you do get through your course and get your accreditation, you can go back and do the teaching course, and then you can come back to the Gordon, and then you can teach more students your knowledge that you've got from us.
Yeah, great. Yep. Wonderful. Okay, and last question for you. What industry certifications or credentials do you recommend people pursue to enhance their employability in these areas?
Yeah, with any young person I'm talking to these days, I always say stay at school. Stay till you get your year 12. It's a hard battle, but getting a year 12 pass really does open your pathways, not just into the TAFE sector or the university sector, but life in general, really. But apart from that, anything, if they're coming in, some sort of work experience wouldn't be such a bad credential to sort of have if you've worked in the industry for a little while, even if it's as a volunteer position, just so that you've got a little bit of a knowledge of what you're in for as well. A driver's license probably would be a good one as well. And if you can look into any of the other sort of certifications like a chemical course or a chainsaw handler's course or something or other like that, that always does give you a little bit of a leg up in our industry and in our courses that we offer here at the Gordon.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you very much, John. Look, I know John's got to teach a class of 5, and I'm very hopeful that we will get to question time before then. So if you do have any questions for John, I'm hoping he'll still be here. But if not, thanks again for your time, John.
No worries. I'll stick around a little bit longer.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate that. Look, we're making pretty good time as it is, so hopefully we can do it. Next up, we've got Thomas from Wyndham City Council. Thomas started his career in turf management on golf courses before moving into open space management with grounds and maintenance provider Green Life Group as a contract manager. He did 3 years as team leader of parks for Hobsons Bay Council, where his team was responsible for the management and maintenance of open spaces within Hobsons Bay. And now he's working as part of Wyndham City Council. He's the team leader of asset handover, where his team handle the construction process of all the new open space assets, which I'm sure he'll tell us a bit more about in a moment. So Thomas, thanks for being part of the panel today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Exciting.
Yeah, so can you explain to a novice like me, and there might be some others, but what asset handover is and what the work you do is?
Yeah, so essentially our team look after all new construction of open space within new developments. So we are the point of contact for all contractors, people constructing these assets, and then we obviously we perform audits on the builds. We're the point of contact for all contractors. So
Yeah,
just adhering there, applying to all our levels of service, and yeah, we just we manage the relationship between developers and Wyndham.
Yeah, great. And I did give a bit of a brief on how you got started with your turf management. But if you want to tell us a bit more about how you got into that, and then how I guess that position led you to where you are now, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think what John mentioned earlier about staying in school. I wasn't the most committed at school, so and I had a great passion for golf and landscape gardening. So I really pursued. That was my, thing. So I finished my schooling and then moved into a turf management apprenticeship, which I absolutely loved. Like, it was the kind of sparked my, passion for the outdoors and horticulture. So yeah, I was there for about 8 years, and then kind of slowly just wanted to progress, to gain more experience in the industry. And I've kind of moved on through working for third party providers, and then now working for local government, which it's been a long journey, but exciting. Still love it. So.
Great. And in your current role, in the asset handover, what are some challenges that you sort of have to face as part of that?
Yeah, look, our role, we're a small team, and we, the growth within Wyndham is mind-boggling at times. So it's probably managing each individual build and staying consistent in best practice, and just keeping that our emphasis to deliver a quality project, over and over. Even though we're not building it, we're still invested in that asset, because we take, after 2 years, we take that asset on for its lifetime. So, we're at the coal face in just trying to make sure that, the construction's to our levels of service, the design's going to stand up over time, and then obviously the horticultural assets going in are maintained correctly before handed over to our internal stakeholders.
Yeah, great. And how do you see sort of the land management industry evolving in the next 5 to 10 years, and how do you think it's going to affect a position like yours?
Yeah, look, I think from an operations perspective, I think the technology's been mentioned several times in this catch up so far. So just the takeoff of electric vehicles, and that's also mowers, and then small plants taken off. Sustainability, eco-friendly equipment, kind of moving away from, if I use playgrounds, for example, the harsh, anything that's got a life expectancy that then becomes obsolete and landfill. It's moving away from that. And then obviously just multi-use areas in an urban environment. We've got a small parcel of land. How can we use that to have as many members of the public activating that space?
Yeah, great. And just going back to something that John said about how it's great to get sort of volunteers, get you volunteering up if you're trying to get into the industry. Are there any opportunities for volunteering or placements for people looking to get involved in the land management side of council? Yeah,
so probably over the next 6 months, we're within our open space department, we're really looking at the trainee apprenticeship pathways. We currently work pretty closely. We've got a long history with Next Gen, so that's always ongoing. But I think what was said before, and I'm probably going to repeat it, is that what can you do to prepare if this is the industry you want to pursue? And it's said a few times is do some research before you come into the role. Horticulture is a massive umbrella of what you can fall into. We've got a vast majority of people on this panel is that take your time, jump into the industry if this is what you want, but obviously be learned in that. And there's just so many avenues you can pursue, but just whichever way you enter the industry, just absorb everything. No one's a know-it-all. Learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding how broad and big the industry is, and I think today's so far been a great example of that, hearing from all of you. Thanks, Thomas. So our last panel member that we're going to pass on to now, before we go to question time, is James from Parks Victoria. James has been working with Parks Victoria for the past 30 years, and in that time he's worked in some of Melbourne's most famous parks and gardens. He's got a Bachelor in Applied Science and an International Diploma in Botanic Garden Management. So, James, thank you very much for making the time to join us today. Oh, can't hear you.
Thanks. Good to be
Oh, there you
here.
go.
Can you hear me now? Jeez.
So, James, I feel like sort of Parks Victoria is one of those names that everybody's probably heard, but they don't necessarily understand a lot of the work. So can you explain a little bit about your role and what Parks Victoria does?
Well, that's all right, because I don't think Parks Victoria understands it very well. And that's not being funny. It's because it's such a broad church for what we do. So I am a horticulturalist. I'm a qualified horticulturalist, and my classification is a park ranger, an area chief ranger. Okay. So I grew up in I grew up in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, where we didn't see gardens. In fact, if you ever saw them, it was because usually it was migrants who grew vegetables, and an Anglo would be having some ornamentals, but not much. And it didn't have a high value because it was the last on your list of priorities. The world has changed a lot in the time that I've been in horticulture, which is 40 years. And I started off as an apprentice gardener before I went to uni, and taking up what John Tucker has said. You stay at school as long as you possibly can, because if you ever make a decision to do something, that's where that previous plan kicks in, right? But where I grew up, if you didn't have it to get to university, you were encouraged to go and get a factory job, right? Or go and seek, and I just didn't have even the skills for a factory, but I did want to be a horticulturalist. And I was lucky to have parents who encouraged that rather than look at it as something that, people do when they can't do something else. So there's been a huge change. In Parks Victoria, we do environmental management, we do water management, we do the bay. It's a good 16% of Victoria, okay? But it's a really wide thing. So I feel confident that I can talk about the enviro and the hort streams. So you can ask away for that one.
Okay. Well, my next question was actually just a little bit about how you got your start and what your pathway was, because you've been with Parks Victoria for a long time, and and you did touch on it, but just a little bit more on that would be great.
And in that history, I did leave Parks Victoria and then come back. But I think just about all the jobs I've had, which started off working in nurseries, City of Melbourne, I was working with the propagators there and producing hydrangeas and astilbes and lots of ornamentals for show. And I still love to this day working in propagation. I received really good advice at points in my life where lucky I did, and I was able to go to that next step. And I think nothing beats a pathways program, and looking for a pathways program when you want to get into it. Now, I've got good horticulturalists in my team, and none of them originated from horticulture. One was flipping burgers in Werribee before he came to us. Another one worked at a very large alcohol chain, which was very handy for us. But he wanted a career. He'd always wanted a career in hort. And the other one is a new arrival from the Korean background. So, we have such a range that have come into it. And I think the trick has been that just about everybody that you can see sitting on your screen now has played a role in some form, right, in providing from work experience to formal education and so on. So for Wyndham and other municipalities to move ahead, it needs all of our streams, right? And you've just got to receive that advice at the key time. There's been a huge change in the industry where ornamental gardens and high-end gardens used to predominantly be a very Anglo middle class, thing. it is now very much across the spectrum, which is a really good thing to see that appreciation. And there's also a move that I'm watching in local community to utilise small spaces to grow plants that are important for food or for herbs. And the other big change that I've seen in the industry is abilities. Okay, so when I started off, you either had all abilities, and the nursery was about the only place you could go into if you didn't have all abilities. Okay, because it had electric trolleys, it had all these things. But you know, unless you had all your faculties, there wasn't much room in there. Okay, there's a big change. Okay, and it's to do with modern technology. We have so much equipment that is battery operated. It's light, it's safe, a lot safer than what it has been in the past. We're seeing a move to even electric mowers. It's absolutely amazing what's out there. So I would say to anybody that is listening now that there is absolutely room for everybody in our trade or in our stream. And that includes languages as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I think the trick in a lot of cases is where you can, you stay at school, and where you can, you do some form of pathways program, and you attach it to accreditation. Okay. So if you were doing a pathways program with PV, right, and you wanted horticulture, you would go and see whether it's Gordon, whether it's Australian School of Ag and Hort, and you say, this is what I want to do. And you sit with somebody that's in the industry that can actually guide them, because it's super, super important that you can hit the ground running when you get a job, but the expectation is not there for you to be able to do everything. Okay, you will learn on the job, but there's some basic entry level stuff that you really want in your sugar bag before you enter in, and that's where Gordon TAFE would come into that to give that advice.
Great. Yeah, and that was one of my questions as well, around the placement opportunities and how to get into the industry. So, yep, if that's you today and you're thinking, well, how do I get into it? Don't hesitate to contact the good people at the Gordon Skills and Jobs Centre, because they will definitely be able to help you get your start. So, James, I mean, you have touched on a few of the things that I was going to ask anyway, but I'll ask them anyway. What sort of challenges do you face in your role?
I think when you're working with younger generation, there's different expectations, right? Yep. On both sides. But we were all young once, and we posed that same challenge to the people that we were working with that was older than us. So I don't see that as being abnormal. But the younger generation can run circles around us with technology, right? And their ability to learn technology. And a challenge for us is learning to accept that some things we're just not going to keep up. But we've got other stuff that we can use or share, right? And not to lose too much confidence in yourself when you're in the industry. You've always got skills and you've always got something that's valued, okay? The challenge, I think, is that it's like a pendulum in government, right, where they swang from the 90s. It was a lot to do with, well, the Kennedy era was where they started shutting down TAFE colleges. There was a whole bunch of things that happened where there's this giant skill gap in a generation, and we're clawing at that back. So challenges are that when people come to work for you, they may not have a lot of the skills, right? And you're gonna have to try and teach at the same time as work with somebody. And there's always a flight risk, because the state of the economy can push a flight risk with any of your workers. So you can invest a lot of time and they will move on to an entirely different industry because they have no choice. So there's heaps of those challenges there. But as somebody entering the industry, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity. I think opportunity is increasing, not decreasing. and I'm seeing it coming back a lot quicker than what I thought.
Well, that's great. That's a very positive thing to hear. The only thing I will say is you say we're all young ones. Some of us are still young.
Yes, you are correct. But, you know, I got asked if I was in transition for retirement yesterday. And a small part of me died.
Last question for you, James, and
Yeah.
then we'll try and get on to some participant questions quickly. How do you see the industry evolving in the next 10 to 15 years, and how does this impact roles like yours?
Okay, the industry will continue to evolve. It will just have subtle differences, right? As humans, we need to eat, right? And I'm seeing just in my time working in other countries, and there is a move away from monoculture because it's actually proving to be a failed system. Okay, so I think in food production, we will see big changes. There will always be a need for recreational-based horticulture. So in parks and rec and sport, we thought during the drought that turf would be a thing of the past, but people craved it when it was gone during droughts, etc. And I think there will be huge moves with sustainable use of water, okay, and fossil-based fuels, of course, because we're still going to require them until we transition out of them. So I think there's huge changes we're going to see, but there will always be parks and gardens, there will always be sport, and there will always be food production. It's just where you sit in that.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much, James. All right. Well, we're right before our ending time, but we'll just try and jump to see if there's any questions in the chat. And if you do have any burning questions that you haven't put in the chat yet, now is absolutely the time to ask them.
Peter, we have one question from Javid. I think that's how the name is pronounced. Apologies if it's not. Who actually I don't think is in the. I think has left since. But the question was to Craig, and it was, how do you see current and future prospects of microgreens and the industry regulations that may exist? And that one was directed at Craig. If Craig is still with us.
He is. We just can't hear him.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to answer that, but look, microgreens are certainly something that's a new trend. As to whether they get grown the same way that they're being grown at the moment remains to be seen. So, yeah, but as I say, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to answer that question. That's yeah. Anyway, anyone else want to have a go at that?
If there's anyone else on the panel want to jump in on that one, I mean, feel free. It's quite a loaded question, isn't it?
I could give you a bit of an insight into that. With the horticulture that I've been teaching over the last few years, this type of industry has sprung up. Like I was saying before, there's a few people that would just want a little bit of a side hustle. They don't want to go into the industry in a huge way. They don't want some massive outlay. But things like microgreens can be done in a medium to medium-sized sort of hothouse. It just takes very good planning and also finding the market as well. But microgreens are on every piece of smashed avo on toast that you get these days anyway. So the market seems to be out there pretty good. So these little micro home industries, smaller size things, they're really, really quite trendy at the moment.
I think one of the other things that's going to happen with regard to the way these things are grown, people are starting to move more towards, as they learn, nutrient-dense food. And unfortunately, the way a lot of the food's being produced these days, it's not nutrient-dense. We've mistakenly perhaps paid farmers for weight rather than nutritionally dense-based foods, and we're about to start and pay the price, unfortunately. So I think that's also going to be a bit of a change. So whilst those small microgreens may well be, a small industry, but it will grow in terms of the organic side of it, I'm sure, down the track. Anyway.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I've got a little crasher here. All right, do we have any other questions?
that's certainly.
Oh.
Oh no, and Rana's just sent through one now. Let's see. Where I guess the question is asking how to look. Where do you look for agricultural research positions if you've got a tertiary qualification? Where's the best place to look for, positions, research positions?
Yeah, look, I don't know the answer to that question, but
I open that one to the panel. If
guess,
anyone in the panel has feels confident asking that one.
Yeah, I'd be looking to join an agency of some sort that could answer that question for you. While you.
Yeah, beautiful.
Also LinkedIn as well. There's some really good opportunities through LinkedIn. So yeah, just get your profile out there and really sell yourself that one.
Beautiful. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to all our panelists for your time and your insights and just teaching us all a little bit about how big and broad the industry is, because it's definitely educational for me. Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to the teams at the Gordon and at Wyndham City Council for helping pull it all together. We've got another question. Just squeeze it in. Job opportunities for Certificate 2 in horticulture.
Are they acquiring a Certificate 2 or they have a Certificate 2?
I'm not sure. I think have a Certificate 2 is my understanding, but I'm not sure.
I'd assume they have 2 in their what other jobs.
Yeah.
From what I'm reading.
Yeah. Generally, with the Certificate 2 in horticulture, it is a good certificate to get into the general retail nursery game, just maybe as customer service along those types of lines. Also, a Certificate 2 in horticulture would give you enough to maybe even start a very small boutique business if you wanted to go into specific type of pruning or lawn mowing or something or other like that. But here at the Gordon, we're concentrating at the moment on Certificate 3, which is really a certificate that would really get you into most avenues of agriculture, horticulture and turf management.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, could I just jump in there? Because we just advertised for a horticultural position, and looking at all the resumes that came in, Certificate 3s, there was quite a bit to choose from. So I would, if you are enjoying horticulture and you think that that's the way you want to go, absolutely go in and do a Cert 3. And look for an apprenticeship if you can. We'll be advertising for apprenticeship pretty soon once we pick the agency we're going to be working with. And we will be looking for Cert 2s and 1s as the entry for that, right? Because it's usually an indicator when you're going for apprenticeships. So I think, my advice is come what may, go into chase the Cert 3 now as your next.
Yeah, I'd say, I've been doing this for 40 years and I never stopped researching. And the more I research, the more I realise how much I don't know. Thomas was right. There's no experts in this industry, and there's just so many avenues you can go down. It's just amazing. It really is. It's one of the biggest wide open industries I've ever seen. So, and as I say, 40 years of studying pretty hard, and I'm gobsmacked at how much I still don't know. So.
Great. Thanks, Akshara, for that question, and hopefully that's given you some good insight on your next move. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll leave it there. Hope everybody found something informative, and thank you again for being a part of it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Good luck. Cheers.
Bye.
See you, everyone.